Last week I went to this workshop called Collaborating Around Collections, and the goals of the workshop really spoke to me. They were understanding what's already working through cross-sector case studies, establishing shared aims and agendas for broader collaboration, and mapping challenges and opportunities across both sectors. So there were a few big names at this workshop, Seb Chan, Ingrid Mason and Tim Sheridan, to name a few. And it soon became apparent that these people were clearly all on the same wavelength, because similar themes were emerging very quickly. For example, collaborations. We were there to talk about collaborations, to discuss collaborations, to figure out how we could do that better. But Ingrid Mason came out with, well, guys, these collaborations already exist. Let's keep the momentum going. Ingrid mentioned HAS and in e-research and the NCRIS roadmap, and there's also collaborations in the DX lab in the State Library of New South Wales. Tim Sheridan collaborates with a whole bunch of people to create some frickin' amazing projects. Museums Victoria and the Atlas of Living Australia collaborating all the time, along with the Biodiversity Heritage Library. These collaborations are already out there. Let's tell people about them, so that if we happen to get in a lift with a politician, we can talk their ears off about the humanities, e-research, digital collection, and why these things should be supported and continue. And throughout this workshop, I also got the vibe that we need to better communicate with the other. We need to communicate better so that they understand what frameworks and what infrastructure and what policies they need to cover if they want to go ahead with a digitization project. The other needs to understand that it's not as simple as slapping a book on a scanner and voila, there's your digitization done. There's also something that Ingrid touched on as well. The need to teach and educate is still very much apparent in this space, and is something that we should continue doing, and not just assume that everyone already knows what they need to get their tasks done. Now, I had the pleasure of listening to Seb Chan speak at this workshop, and I remember asking after his presentation the people around me if he was always that provocative. He came out with museum collections, museum online collections that is, are an answer to the wrong question. Now, let me unpack that for you a little bit, well, at least as I understood it. Think of it this way. If your museum digitized their entire collection, what would that do? Now, yeah, I know, I can hear you guys saying, greater access, people will know what we have. But if you look at a museum online collection, most of the entries are sort of bare bones, and half of them don't even have images. It's just metadata. So right there and then, that tells me that digitizing your collection isn't the answer. What you need to do to engage people and bring them into the story of your institution is to provide that story. And that's partly what I think Seb was talking about when he mentioned that museum online collections isn't exactly the answer that museums should have been aiming for. So I was really glad to hear from Seb that people are infusing the two experiences, bringing the digital into the physical space. Seb mentioned an exhibition that he put together with a wallpaper collection, no less, and he brought that collection into the physical space but through a digital medium, and people loved it. I think at the end of the day, this is Seb's point. Museums should be spaces for people to reuse and remix collections, as opposed to a place that displays collections. Which brings me to the last point I want to mention. A few of the speakers on the day were saying, who do we create our collections for? Are they for us, the professionals, for the academics, for the general public? There seems to be a disconnect, and this is reflected quite clearly in our cataloguing policies. What information that we gather around collection items seems to suggest that we're trying to please all peoples, which is something that most of us are taught at a very young age, that you cannot please everybody. So why are we doing it in our museum collections? At the end of his talk, Seb put up this slide, a collection of so whats, and in my mind these could quite clearly be a set of goals. We can work on correcting the public's natural assumption that our online collections contain everything we have to offer. We can improve our collecting practices. We can create targeted collections. We can clarify who it is we're actually collecting for. We can tweak our cataloguing practices to reflect that. And lastly, we can become innovators in our sector and look for different answers when it comes to collecting, collections, and how we search them.